Alright everybody, I'm making this video because there's a lot of critical context that I'm realizing a lot of people completely miss when they get into powerlifting. And this is just to make solid, consistent gains. This is not even about the elite level, which I've been talking about recently. Put a bunch of clips together of some of my training from the past, and also for this one I decided I'd feature some of my athletes in there, so anyone who you see who isn't me, it's one of my athletes at one point or another in time. So one of the first things I want to go over is powerlifting is a sport, and you got to treat it like one. Powerlifting isn't easy, and you might think it is because it's at your own pace. It's not like other sports where you have a coach yelling at you to run suicides, no teammates watching you slack or anything like that. But that self-accountability is what makes it a lot harder. You're completely in charge of everything relating to your performance. No one can really pick up that slack for you. You have to track your calories, say no to distractions, stick to your habits, and be introspective and honest about your efforts. And if you want some real results, you have to put pressure on yourself to perform. Powerlifting is only easy if you're bad at it. It's pretty hard to stay consistent and to continually evaluate yourself with honest eyes. So that's the first point that I want to go over. The next thing I want to talk about is fundamental truths about powerlifting. Who is it for? Who's going to struggle with this? If any of these things I'm about to speak of are hitting a little too close to home, then you've got some inner work to do if you want to continue the sport, or you might want to consider finding another sport. You expect progress every week. Strength is not always linear. When you look at it from a week-to-week basis, sometimes multiple periods of weeks are going to feel very heavy. Sometimes you're going to have to miss lifts. But that doesn't mean that you are regressing. Having a bad training day or even a hard block doesn't mean that training is going bad. The body is still adapting, and the lifters who stick through those slow times are going to be the ones who get the results in the end. You skip the boring work. There are thousands of little things, exercises, mobility, accessories, back downs, meals even, that lead up to you hitting a PR. It's not just about that big top set, which I will go into more later in this video. You avoid discomfort. If you only train when you feel good, then you'll never see what you're capable of. The biggest problem with powerlifting in this generation is that the golden microcycle teaches you that fatigue is bad. You need fatigue to boost your work capacity and to hit growth. If things don't ever feel heavy and always feel good, then you aren't training hard enough to progress. You don't take feedback well. Criticism from your coach is not an attack, it's the quickest way to progress. Every great lifter that you see had years of refinement and constant correction. Just be coachable. And lastly, you can't play the long game. If you are only in it for the quick PRs, you will burn out and you will lose focus. Powerlifting isn't about how strong you can get within a few training blocks or a macro cycle. It's about how strong you can get in 5 to 10 years. Consistency always beats motivation, and to get anywhere near your potential, it's going to take at least that long. Let's talk fundamentals. Nutrition. Protein, you got to track it. You got to aim for 0.8 grams per pound of lean muscle mass. You're going to want to find out what your body fat percentage is just to be safe if you want to get it accurate. You can look up online how to do that. An example is if you weigh 200 pounds at 20% body fat, you are 160 pounds of lean muscle mass. Then you multiply that by 0.8, and that will give you 128 grams of protein. And that's the minimum you should be hitting. You can hit a little bit more just to be on the safe side, but you should not be getting any less than this to make progress. Now let's go ahead and talk about carbs and fruits. This is very important for pre-training before you get to the gym. Generally speaking, no matter what your macros look like, you want to get at least 100 to 200 grams of carbs total before you get to the gym. Most of your carbs, if you can help it, should come before your training. What you want to be focusing on is starchy carbs and getting fruit for sustained energy in these meals before your training. Now, those starchy carbs are going to help you sustain in the middle of your training and as your training drags on longer, whereas that fruit's just going to give you a lot of liver glycogen to make you feel good. Something you do want to avoid for your carbs, though, is avoid having pure sugar before you're lifting. You will crash. You can, however, have pure sugar during your workouts, especially if you need to pick me up in the middle of it and you're losing energy, then that would be the time to consume it. But outside of that, it is not going to benefit your training, and you just don't want to crash early. I want to add an example of starchy carbs to clarify. Rice and potatoes are very good examples of starchy carbs. They're probably some top tier ones in my opinion, but you could also just be having something like bread, whole grain bread would also work. But basically things that are going to take a little bit longer for you to digest is what I mean by starchy carbs. All right, next point is that you want to watch the diet for your mindset. And this is a really underrated one, and you might not see the value in it at first, but I can tell you as someone who's been an athlete in multiple sports for over 2 decades and coaching a lot of other athletes, that the ones that are the most focused and come in the most fresh are the ones that are going to be most present and really being able to try to get the most out of everything, including their warm-ups, their mobility, their accessories. They're just going to come in ready to attack what they have to do. And that mindset can stack up over time because it improves the quality of your workouts. So you should, as much as you can, try to avoid things that are negative inputs. You don't want to start your workout after doom scrolling or watching depressing content or like true crime stuff that's to get like really engaging and just really distracts you. You want to avoid anything that's just constant stimulation. You can still watch things, and by no means do you need to lock yourself in your room and just be like, mindset, I need to get ready to train. But if you can help it, you should try to be around an environment that's either neutral or uplifting, rather than something that sucks you in onto a screen. I've really needed to talk about this one for a while, and it's warm-ups done right. This is mostly for my athletes. If you have a different coach or you're coaching yourself, feel free to try whatever you want. But I think if you follow the general principle of circulation followed by skill acquisition, then you're going to be on the right path. So what you should be doing before you start your main lifts is you got to do a general warm-up. This is something like walking around on an incline. You could do like, if you did a sport in the past, you could do like one of those warm-ups where you go back and forth, do like your side shuffles, your skips, all that different kind of stuff. And your main goal is just to get the blood flowing, because it's going to allow you, when you have your blood pumping, to access your mobility a lot quicker than you go into it cold. So if you just start stretching cold, it's going to take you way longer to get into the rhythm for your training. So be sure that you got your blood pumping before that. After your general warm-up, you should be going into mobility. And something you should do for mobility every single time you're doing an upper session is shoulder mobility. The shoulder is the most mobile joint in the body, and it is always injury prone. People always have rotator cuff problems. You should definitely, even if you're healthy, do at least a little something for your shoulders, and also for your hips for lower body, because it's a ball and socket joint. It has a lot of range of motion that you can access. So you're going to want to make sure that you're able to access it comfortably before you put it under heavy loads. Otherwise, things are more likely to snap up. Now, going to the specific warm-ups. This is when you get a barbell on your back or in your hands, or you're doing it for the main lifts. You want to start with high reps. Once again, circulation, but this is specific. So you want to shoot for 8 to 15 reps with somewhere between the bar or the first increment of plate you have, whether that's a 45-pound plate or a 25 kilo / 55-pound plate. And you want to do this for 1 to 2 sets, because you are making sure as you do all these reps that you have done enough mobility work to even access the positions you're supposed to get into. Because some people will just start warming up and they'll be squatting high and high and high until the weight gets heavy enough to push them down. You should be able to get on that first warm-up and see if you need to warm up your hips more to unlock your hips so you can already be in a good movement pattern, if possible. So the next warm-up you do will be 3 to 5 reps with 40 to 50% of your max. And this is really up for you to play around with. I would recommend being a little closer to 50% for a bench press, and if you're doing something like a deadlift or a squat that's a little more taxing, maybe closer to 40%. Now, with your next warm-ups, this is very loose for my standard for this, but this is where the skill acquisition comes in. So skill acquisition, thinking about what that is, that's just lifting something heavy enough for you to be ready for the next load or the skill you're trying to practice that day, which is maybe a top single, top triple, whatever it might be. So your next warm-ups should be no more than 5 of them. It could be 1 more warm-up, it could be 4 more, or it could be 5 more. Should not be more than this. Should be singles only. And it's up to you how you want to get there to reach your top set. The only parameters I have with this is for your final warm-up set. It should be 90 to 95% of your top set weight. So if you're going to do 200 pounds on a bench press, 90% of that is 180. That's a reasonable jump to make, 180 pounds to 200 pounds. And that way you don't fatigue yourself too much when you get up there, because if you really feel the need to, I guess you could take, for that 95%, 190 pounds, but it's even better if you can make that big jump from 180 to 200 and it's still reasonable. This next one is very near and dear to my heart. Communication with your coach. Always communicate. Your coach cannot read your mind, and some of the things that you might do of your own accord might be exactly the opposite of what your coach would want you to do. So, what are these things to communicate? Schedule changes. If you have something coming up, you need things moved around, just let your coach know with as much advance time as possible. Even if you have to miss like a whole week of training and you're scared what your coach is going to say, it's fine. They need to know rather than find out a week later, oh, I skipped a whole week of training. Just let them know. They should understand. Aches, pains, or technique adjustments. If you did a different technique, or preferably if you want to try a new technique, you should run it by your coach first, not just pick up the thing you found on the internet and then potentially disrupt your training session. Questions about your warm-ups or execution. If you are wondering why something's in the program, or you're not quite sure how to warm up to a weight you've never done before, just ask your coach. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. Point number 6. Track everything. Record your weights and your RPE, especially when they feel easy. You want to send videos of every SBD set. You want to track your accessories by filling out the sheets. There should be a section that you have. Speaking to my own athletes, guys, we need to be a lot better about this, is tracking your accessories and filling out the actual RPE of every single section. Because if you are in the middle of your training block, let's say week 2, and there's no feedback on it, then your coach is probably going to assume that it's going well. And if it's going too well, then you could be getting more gains out of it. You could be pushing a little bit harder. If it's going really badly and your coach is not aware, then they're going to keep giving you really hard week 2s. So it's really important for pacing, because as you get stronger, pacing becomes everything. So you should be filling out your sheets completely in every section that it is that you have to fill it. And I got a bonus for you guys. This will tie into some of my later points, but occasionally you should film yourself when you're pushing your accessories, because most of the time, as I've seen with my own athletes and a lot of other athletes, people do not push their accessories as hard as they think they do. So use that to keep yourself accountable. That's what this is for. This next segment is more about intent, and it's that the top set is not everything. And it's really important to not obsess over the top set, because most of your strength is really built through the back downs, the accessories, and all the extra volume throughout the week, as well as what you do outside of the gym. The top set is just a test for expressing the strength that you've built, a chance to execute and gain the skill of lifting heavier weight, and there's a lot of variables that can affect it. but don't let a bad top set erase the real work that you've done through everything else. Point number 8, push your accessories hard. Now, if you don't push your accessories, you will 100% get injured, because you are only as strong as your weakest link. And as a lifter who practices mainly squat, bench press, and deadlift, you are going to develop weak links. There are things that the squat, bench press, and deadlift do not develop equally, especially depending on how you're built. If you're more of an upright squatter and you use a lot of quads, you are not going to develop your posterior chain very much through squatting. Vice versa, if you're more of a bent over squatter, you're getting a lot more low back than you are quads. You got to work on your quads directly. If you are not getting more muscle mass over time, you are doing it wrong. As a power lifter, you should look like an off-season bodybuilder eventually. And the biggest problem with modern day programming is not focusing on developing a strong core, back, and lower back. 10 years ago, everyone wasn't so concerned with fatigue that they skipped out on exercises that would torch your lower back and core muscles, such as good mornings, bent over rows, back extensions, high rep squats, RDLs. And nowadays, everyone treats the main lifts as if they are the most important thing. And the problem with that is when your accessories start to lag behind, they will become a limiting factor and you will have to play catch up. Also, I wanted to address that in a previous YouTube video, I had stated that a strong upper back is more important than a strong lower back for most lifters. This was assuming you already have built a base. You should already have done your good mornings, your bent over rows, your deadlifts, and stuff like that to like at least a basic level of strength, and then your upper back becomes the limiting factor. But to go back over this, you are only as strong as your weakest link. Push your accessories just as hard, if not harder, actually a lot harder than your main lifts, and you will experience success. Alright, for the next point, I want to... This is a kind of a jab at my lifters, but read your program twice. This one's very simple. But before you do your set, double check that you are about to approach the right set. You don't want to accidentally do too many reps, an extra set. You don't want to do too much weight and be on the wrong week. Just double check before you do your set. Very simple one, but a lot of people mess this up. All right, next point is sleep. Sleep equals performance. You should try to sleep before 1 a.m., and that's being a little generous. You want to shoot for 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep a night consistently. If you have a bad night of sleep or two, it's not going to be the end of the world, but you should be averaging around 7.5 to 9 hours. And you should really prioritize your sleep during intense training blocks where you're trying to grow a lot. Another thing to focus on is hydration. 2 hours before your training, you should get at least 50 to 70 ounces of fluid. And total in a day, no matter what your size is, you should be getting at least 100 ounces of liquids, if up to 150 if you're a bigger individual. And within hydration, you want to focus on electrolytes too, because you can't retain the water in your body as easily without electrolytes. So you want to gun for 2 to 4 grams of sodium and potassium per day. And it's fine to have a little bit higher intake because all of you are athletes, I'm assuming, who are watching this video. One of my favorite recommendations for very cheap electrolytes, assuming you don't mind the taste of slightly salty water, is to purchase no salt on Amazon. It comes out to about like 4 cents per serving, and I would recommend putting 1/4 to 1/2 of a teaspoon in water, about 16 ounces of it, 2 to 4 times a day, and that will make a very big difference, especially if you live in a humid environment and you sweat a lot. Another tip is very underrated, but get your steps in. You don't have to be super nitty-gritty on this, because this is just a guide to make progress consistently as a powerlifter. It's not to be the most elite of the elite, although I will go over some tips for that. But you need to move around in the day. You can't just go and sit on your couch for like 8 hours and then go lift. You're not going to recover. you should be getting around 7,000 to 10,000 steps per day. If you're a heavier lifter, aim closer to 7,000. If you're a lighter lifter, go closer to 10,000. This helps a lot with inflammation, soreness, and recovery, especially in the lower body and the back and the hips. And motion is lotion. You gotta do something. You can't just lift weights all day and then flop on the couch. And the last point, last but definitely not least, because this definitely applies to a lot of people, especially the age demographic who is usually interested in powerlifting nowadays. Drinking and smoking. This is the truth. You can make progress if you're a casual lifter, drinking and smoking, but it does slow down your recovery. It does mess with your sleep. It does mess with your consistency a little bit if done frequently. Something that, whether you're casual or especially if you're trying to be elite, is you should never be getting blackout drunk as an adult, right? You should know your limits. You should not need to get blackout drunk to have fun, and you should just this is something, regardless of whether you're powerlifting or not, that you probably shouldn't do. It doesn't have any net positives. But if you're going to drink, then generally speaking, you should do it earlier in your training block, but not within the first 2 to 3 days of your deload. And for the reason that you are using a deload to actively recover, and when you drink, it impairs your recovery. Your body is spending more time filtering out the toxin that is alcohol than it is actually repairing itself. So, very important. If you remember one thing from the segment and you want to still drink while you're doing your powerlifting and enjoy life a little bit, do not drink a lot. Try to be sober for the first 3 days of your training block, because that's when you're recovering from your heaviest lifts from the previous training block. Here's some more practical tips. When you go out to drink, you should try to limit yourself to 1 to 3 drinks, and you should try to eat some food before you go out drinking, because it won't negatively impact you as much. And you want to match your alcohol content with water. You should be drinking at least as much water as you are drinking alcohol. So that way, if you do want to drink a little more often, then at least it's not going to bleed as much into your training and you don't have to play catch up. So another tip for that is use the electrolytes, like the no salt, to help with recovery after you've gone out drinking. When you get home, take some electrolytes the morning of as well. It'll work wonders in making you feel so much better for your training session. It's still not as good as if you didn't have a couple of drinks, but if you are in that circumstance, then mitigate it as much as possible. Use the strategy of having electrolytes and water. General tip, this applies to everybody. You should never drink before a big PR peak session. I think that's pretty self-explanatory why you shouldn't do that, because you're going to push yourself physically harder than you ever have before if you're going to get a PR, so you might as well prepare for it. Now, if you are chasing elite, then you should just flat out try to cut alcohol and smoking from your life. Simple as that. The best in the world, you are not going to be able to contend with them or get to that level if you're drinking and smoking regularly. Really, week 2 in a training block is the only time when you could do it, and you're going to have to say no pretty much all the time if you want to be world class. But that doesn't fall into most people's category, so for those others, just follow the other tips. But my final thoughts about this are, powerlifting progress isn't about the perfect program. It's really more about the things that most people overlook within this list. Accountability, execution, recovery, communication, long-term consistency, and just staying in the right mindset. So if you want to get strong, just treat it like it's something of value, and show up every day for yourself. Be honest and stop chasing shortcuts. I'm going to go ahead and link some extra resources in the description below for doing some mobility work for shoulders and hips. I hope this video helped. I know it's a bit longer of one, but I really wanted to make a complete guide for all the things that people just really tend to overlook, because if you're going to commit to making progress, you might as well be able to cover the basics. And I know this is a lot, but yes, this video is about the basics that are overlooked. Drop a comment, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.